On an expensive counter in the late 1920s, modern health could look almost ceremonial. A glass bottle, a measured dose, a promise that science, properly bottled, could restore whatever age or fatigue had started to take away. The miracle was not hidden. It was advertised in plain language. Radioactivity sold as refinement. And for a while, wealthy Americans did not fear that word. They paid extra for it. The most famous American radium health disaster is not quite the story people remember. Radium really did turn up in consumer goods, including toothpaste and dentifrices. But the best documented fatal scandal was not a radioactive toothpaste called Radithor. It was Radithor itself, a patent medicine from East Orange, New Jersey, made by William J. A. Bailey, a promoter with a talent for borrowed authority. His companies sold Arium tablets and a dentifrice called Dentarium. The dental angle was real. The corpse at the center of the scandal came from drinking. Radium had enjoyed a glamorous reputation almost from the moment Marie and Pierre Curie identified it in 1898. By the 1920s, that glow had become a market. Bailey sold Radithor as triple distilled water, guaranteed to contain at least 1 microcurie each of radium-226 and radium-228. Later, historians estimate more than 400,000 bottles were sold between 1925 and 1930. Federal investigators said Bailey advertised it for more than 100 conditions, from arthritis and high blood pressure to wrinkles, indigestion, and sexual decline. The trick was almost bureaucratic. The FDA later noted that Radithor was accurately labeled as radioactive water, which meant the weak 1906 law did little to stop it. Eben Byers was exactly the kind of customer this world produced. He was a Pittsburgh businessman, head of the Eben Byers Company, and a former U.S. amateur golf champion. After injuring his arm on a party train after the Harvard-Yale game in 1927, he was told by the Pittsburgh physician C.C. Moyar to try Radithor. He began in December 1927, and by one account, averaged 3 bottles a day for nearly 2 years. At first, he felt restored. He recommended it freely, gave it to friends, and even fed it to racehorses. Then the chemistry turned inward. By 1930, his teeth were falling out. In 1933, JAMA described EMB as 52 years old, about 110 pounds, emaciated, anemic, and suffering from necrosis of the jaw. The paper called it the first recorded case correctly diagnosed as radium poisoning from drinking radium water and confirmed by autopsy. Later reviews estimated he had consumed about 1,400 bottles. The cause of death was given as necrosis of the jaw, abscess of the brain, secondary anemia, and terminal pneumonia. When an FTC investigator visited Byers at his Southampton home, the report concluded, "A more gruesome experience in a more gorgeous setting would be hard to imagine. Luxury at the surface, disintegration underneath." Regulators had already begun moving. The Federal Trade Commission described Bailey's claims as false and misleading, and on December 19, 1931, ordered him to stop saying Radithor was harmless or effective against roughly 150 disorders. But Byers gave the scandal a face that regulation alone could not. He died in 1932, and mild radium therapy was no longer a futuristic indulgence. It was a man with much of his jaw destroyed, a fashionable cure translated into bone. That is why the toothpaste detail needs care. Government sources confirm that radium was added to products like toothpaste, hair creams, and food. Bailey even crossed into dental branding with Dentarium. But the museum-famous radioactive toothpaste, Doramad, belongs to wartime Berlin in the 1940s, not Jazz-Age America. The American lesson is stranger than the myth. This was not one absurd tube on a shelf. It was a culture of radioactive consumer faith, tablets, jars that treated water, creams, tonics, and bottled prestige. Set Byers beside the radium girls and the pattern becomes harder to dismiss. In one case, workers tipped paintbrushes with their lips. In the other, a millionaire drank radioactivity as a status cure. Different settings, same element, same violence to bone. Radium was not only a laboratory wonder or a marketing fantasy. It entered ordinary rituals of work, grooming, and self-improvement. And once it did, the damage kept working long after the sales pitch ended. It kept working in the dark. If you liked what you watched, please like and subscribe. We post interesting and crazy stories from throughout history every Wednesday and Saturday. Yesterday's craziness, because yesterday was crazy too.